Is Councilmember Brown invisible today?
Trying to get the picture for the printer.
Oh, okay.
You're supposed to be here today, but should be tomorrow, so next week.
You're awesome. You knew that already, though.
Is that something you want me to tell them, or
I'll email them again.
I had somebody? Hey, it's fine.
Huh?
I think our clocks are really close to being synced. Did you get in here?
I fixed it last week.
I don't remember.
Oh, it's a little fast now.
Okay, Mayor, whenever you're ready.
Okay, ready? All right. Good evening. We will call this special meeting of the Auburn City Council, June 22nd, 2020 to order. This is a virtual meeting per the Governor's Emergency Proclamation 2028. The City of Auburn is prohibited from holding an in-person meeting at this time. All meetings will be held virtually and telephonically. All right, Sean, will you please call roll?
Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Here?
Councilmember Baggett.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember J-Raj. Councilmember J-Raj.
Here.
Councilmember Malinga.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns. Councilmember Stearns. Mayor.
Okay.
No, I have one more. Councilmember Trout Manuel.
Here.
I'm not aware of Councilmember Stern's
Okay.
status at this time.
Thank you.
All right, we will move immediately into the one resolution that we have on our special council meeting agenda this evening. It is resolution number 5533, a resolution temporarily designating the locations for regular, special, and study session meetings of the City Council and of the committees, boards, and commissions of the city to the virtual locations until King County enters into Phase 3 of the Governor's Safe Start reopening plan. Do we have a motion? Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt resolution 5533.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilmember Trout Manuel.
I second that, Mayor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. You've explained the resolution where we have to, once again, pause during the governor's emergency proclamation. So this allows us to conduct meetings virtually for various public meetings.
Very good. Council, do you have any questions or comments? Seeing no virtual hands raised, all those in favor of resolution number 5533, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. Passes.
Thank you very much.
All right, that is the only item on the special session agenda, and so this meeting is adjourned. And Deputy Mayor, I will turn it over to you for the study session.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Can you give me just
We
two?
will-
Can you give me just 1 minute,
I'm
please?
sorry. Go ahead, Shauna. Go ahead.
We're so excited to get started.
Yes, go. Just one quick thing. Okay, thank you for waiting. I'm ready.
Thank you, City Clerk. Good evening, everyone. This is our City Council study session for June 22nd, 2020. And once again, for the Governor's Emergency Proclamation 2028, we are not allowed to hold in-person meetings, so we again are conducting this meeting virtually and telephonically. Sean, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember DeCourcy.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember J. Raj.
Here.
Councilmember Malenga.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns. Councilmember Stearns.
Councilmember Stearns, we need to have you unmuted and have a verbal acknowledgement.
Councilmember Stearns, can you hear me?
Do you have your volume turned up on your
Can you scoot over and see if he's in the picture?
computer?
Can't hear him, but he's talking.
So, Councilmember Stearns, I'm sorry, but we can't hear you. You are unmuted. Can you log out and log back in? We'll let you back in. I'll mark you as here. I can see that you're here. Councilmember Trout Manuel.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Council, we have need for an executive session this evening. So at this time, I think City Attorney Hyde is on with us, I believe.
I'm sorry, what was that, sir?
I'm sorry, we have need for executive session this evening,
Yes.
and I would like to turn this over to Acting City Attorney Dan Hyde, if he's on with us.
Go ahead and unmute him. Go ahead, Dan. City Attorney Hyde, go ahead.
I don't know if you can hear me or not. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
We can
can.
hear you.
Okay. We need to go into executive session for a pending legal matter. And this is also going to be something that we're going to ask one of the attorneys who've been handling this case to help us out. But before we move into that, and this is perhaps something that may be first or certainly one of the earlier executive sessions that some of the council has been involved in. The state law allows executive sessions to be held only in express and specific purposes. And one of them includes to discuss with legal counsel matters that are dealing with pending litigation. And those statutes are very specifically defined. You have to have an attorney present, and you have to have either a pending or potential litigation that is involved. In this case, we do have a pending litigation, so we don't have to worry about that part of the statute. Another thing that I would also make sure that we want to understand is this involves a need for confidentiality that affects everybody that's in attendance at the executive session. So no outside people, no citizens, no one else should be in attendance at this other than as needed, the public officials or the people that are allowed by law. And that would include the outside council in addition to public officers. I want to make sure that everybody understands this need for confidentiality, and especially if this is the first time that you've been through this, I want to make sure that everybody understands that's something by state law has an obligation. We cannot, as public officers, disclose confidential information gained by reason of the public position or office we hold. The other thing that I want to make sure is everybody understands this is also included in the city's code of conduct in our code, and it's also included in the rules of procedure of the city council. So it's replete throughout all of those documents, consistent with
Dan?
that we need
Dan?
to make sure that, yes.
We are not in executive session yet. You do realize that, right? We are still in the council meeting. We have to sign out and go.
Okay. This could be given now or could be in the executive session. I just want to make sure that everybody understands what's involved in an executive session.
Yes, we can go through that again once we get into executive session if necessary,
Then let's
okay?
do that, please.
So,
Okay.
council, you will need to, while this meeting will still continue, sorry, Deputy Mayor, while this meeting will still continue, you all need to sign out of the current meeting so that you can sign into the executive session meeting. Make sense?
Right.
All right.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. So at this time, we will adjourn to executive session.
So I'll need
We will reconvene
the amount of
session.
time,
45 minutes.
45.
Sorry, say the time again?
So we're going to be in executive session for 45 minutes with the city attorney.
Okay.
That's correct. We have to identify a time frame or estimated time frame for the executive session, and the purpose is litigation, as I was previously mentioned.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned, we will adjourn to executive session. We will convene the study session upon completion of the executive session. Thank you, everybody.
Remember, confidential. Confidential, that's right.
Don't you know?
So Mayor, if you have any problems, just pop them down.
Can we kill all the mics in here?
So I'll say we'll reconvene at 7:05. I took, Mayor, the documents. I took them.
Oh, great, thank you.
Hey, Sean, I'm going to unmute me and you mute you. Okay, so that you're in control.
Yeah, everybody should be, whoa. Okay, I'm muted.
Okay, I'm not, so.
They should be logging back in for us.
Yeah, I just saw like 4 of them join, so.
Okay. I saw the deputy mayor. And I'll need him to call the meeting back to order.
Oh, I could have done that for you.
Oh, wow, thank you.
Why I wear the stretchy jeans?
So Damick is gonna get us an extra charger for in here.
I intended to bring mine and left it on the kitchen counter.
But it's not, you're not the only one that needs it sometimes. It's various people need them. And so we have 1 or 2 here that just live back in Jason's room. Then it should. Because the only reason we have that one is because Teresa has a bid opening tomorrow.
Ah.
And so she needs for all the service for the day.
Thank you. I was a little scared because the battery on this goes down fast.
On video.
I went in at like 70% and it was down to 27.
Yeah, I've tried to do a couple of our team meetings outside to try and make myself a little bit less translucent. But like halfway through the meeting, I end up like, and the screen's really hard to read outside, so it'll like start flashing at me, and I'm like, oh crap.
Yep.
There's 23, so I'm sure.
We'll say she's up first.
Oh, we're not done?
No. Sorry.
I thought you adjourned. It's all right.
But it's not a really long study session.
Well, now that you said that,
It's the first quarter update.
I'm gonna grab a chair.
That's true. That's Jamie. And there will be questions. Yeah, you need to sit.
All right, I'm gonna close this so that we can.
So I'm gonna unmute us. I'm gonna froze something.
Any of these?
Sorry?
Anybody on there? I think this might be Kent Hayes, but I'm not sure.
I know Kent is coming.
Supposed to be here. Yeah, Kay. Yeah, allow.
Okay. And I don't recognize anyone else.
I don't think you would have anything to say.
Kent?
Yeah.
For community court.
Oh, that's right, yes. Good job, promoting him.
Okay. All right.
So I'm gonna ask you, you know what his title is?
He is outreach coordinator.
Oh crap.
Can you rename the outreach coordinator, okay? There.
Hey, Sean, are we ready?
Hey.
Yes, we are.
Is there an S at the end?
Great, thank you.
Sean?
Okay, thank you, everyone. We will call the study session back to order. And we will go to item 3, announcements, reports, and presentations.
No, Chair.
Okay, Sean, I believe we do have an agenda.
Chair, I'm so
modification.
sorry. We do have an agenda mod. Ordinance
Thank you.
6776 has been removed from the agenda.
Great, thank you. Okay. So we will proceed with agenda item 4A, which is our financial report through May 2020, our first quarter update. And Director Thomas.
Thank you, Council. I'm going to have an application that this financial
Director, I'm sorry, you're breaking up. We are unable to hear you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try maybe turning my video off, but I wanted to be able to share my screen.
I can hear you now, so.
Yeah, she was going to share her screen.
Am I breaking up still?
Not right now, you're not, no.
I'm going to try. Okay.
So our second option, if you break up again, we can have you call in and then share your screen separately.
Okay. Sounds good. I will hopefully not break up anymore. But I wanted to just preface presentation with the fact that it's not our normal quarterly report. We have, I'm actually presenting data through May to get the council the most updated information.
Director, I'm sorry, Director.
Yes.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
Yep.
And so
Okay.
if we can have you call in on the phone number.
I can try that. If I try stopping my video, maybe would that?
You wouldn't be able
help,
to.
or would it be better if I?
Yeah, that'll work.
Jamie, I think if you call on your cell phone, you'll still be able. Then, if you turn your Surface down, you'll still be able to share your screen if that's what you wanted to do.
Okay, let me give it a try.
Not right now. That number's been there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm gonna allow to talk first.
Oh,
Director, I need you to go ahead and turn your sound down on your iPad.
fair.
There we go.
Hopefully that's better. I'm going to look for my share screen for the council.
Can we make that so they can see her screen?
And I am going to open the PowerPoint since my PDF is not available. So I'm just going to start from the beginning. All right. So again, this is our financial update through May 2020. Our May numbers are not final, so there is some timing differences that you will see.
Jamie, Jamie, your screen sharing has not come. There it is.
Oh, has it? Do you see it yet?
Yes, it's there now. We've got general fund revenue combined. Oh, there we go. City of Auburn financial report, January through May.
Yep. Okay. So it's it's the City of Auburn financial report, January through May.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. I apologize for all of the confusion. I'm also going to spend most of my time just talking about the revenues that we had addressed as part of the COVID, the revenues that we are adjusting in the budget due to COVID. To give everybody an update, that's really where the main variances are between our original budget and our actual. So we'll be looking at really just those main revenues. There's not a lot of difference in any of the other revenue streams right now, but of course, if you have any questions, please let me know. So as a recap, this first screen is to show where our original budget, our original 2020 budget with all of our revenue sources was at the beginning of the year, and what our amended budget for all of our revenue sources will be as of August. So currently, we haven't done an official budget amendment that we have brought to council, but beginning in August, we'll be doing an amendment to the budget to address all of the revenue shortfalls that we've identified with COVID and recession impacts. So you can see that the blue highlighted items are the revenue streams that we are adjusting down as a result of COVID. And a reminder that we had a little over $6 million in revenues that we've identified that are going to have cuts. And then we've filled those cuts or those shortfalls with $3.7 million in expenditure savings and a reallocation of $2.7 million in revenue reallocation. Those changes will also be identified in the budget amendment that we bring to council in August. So these should all be they're more detailed, they're the more specific numbers, but in general, they're all the same revenues and the reductions in revenue sources that we have discussed in the past. So moving forward is sales tax. So that's the most significant revenue stream that we expect to have impacted from COVID. And so far, we're on track with our amended projections. So our amended year-to-date collections, we had estimated to be at $7.2 million. And through May, we have collected $7.1 million. Now, there is a 2-month delay in the collection of sales tax. So March activity, for example, was not collected until May. And really, so that means we just now saw the first impacts of COVID in our May collection of sales tax. One anomaly that we did see in April, you can notice that our expected budget or the expected sales tax that we were going to collect is higher than what we actually collected. And that's supposed to be reflective of February numbers. And our estimate is that businesses that we know were open in February weren't filing necessarily in April because maybe they weren't in the office, they weren't operating at full capacity like a lot of businesses and the city as well, for example. So we're thinking that they're just behind on their sales tax collections, or their sales tax remittance. So we would expect to see a catch up at some point throughout the next couple of months to account for that February activity from those businesses. But so far for May, our May collections, which reflected March activity, was really right on track with what we'd expected. We were within $26,000 of our estimate for March. So that's a good thing that we're not too far off. The only thing that we're going to continue to monitor is that these projections do assume that we recover beginning in June, that businesses start to open back up beginning in June, and that we have a slow recovery to about 90% of what our original budget was by the time we get to December. So we're not expecting that we actually achieve our full budgeted amounts by the fourth quarter, but we do assume a pretty aggressive or a moderately aggressive increase back to normal. So again, if we have any additional closures or reclosures back to phase one, for instance, then we will definitely have to come back and look at our sales tax projections again. So this is a breakdown of our sales tax by the different categories. Was there a question? Okay, so this is a breakdown of our sales tax by category. Now again, this is through May, so this is through May collection. So the only abnormal month that we're seeing in these numbers is March. So this is really November through March activity that we're looking at. Construction remains strong through May. Manufacturing saw a decrease. That actually is wholly attributed to transportation manufacturing. And automotive had a pretty significant decrease of $333,000, which makes sense considering auto sales makes up about $300,000 to $320,000 per month in the sales tax that we collect. So seeing a $333,000 decrease for the year to date that's really just illustrating a month's worth of, or March's no activity in car sales, essentially. And then the decrease in services of $118,000 over 2019 is really an indication of restaurants and personal services and retail that were closed as a result of COVID in the second half of March. So then moving on, we've got the criminal justice sales tax. This is very similar to our regular sales tax distribution. However, this is sales tax collected statewide. It is state sales tax that goes to the state, and then they reallocate it to different cities depending on crime statistics within each individual city. So like sales tax, there's a 2-month delay, and it actually is reflected of all sorts of sales throughout the state, not just the city. So you can see in the first quarter, our actual collections were much higher than, or not much higher, but they definitely exceeded our original budget as well as our expected budget. April collections were a little bit higher, but we are assuming that they probably statewide saw something really similar to what we saw in the state, which is we probably had fewer remittances and fewer filings than should have been happening to reflect February activity. So we expect that there may be a little bit of a pickup again or a catch up with those February remittances in the upcoming months. And we're assuming a slightly more moderate recovery in our criminal justice sales tax compared to our sales tax and some of our other revenue sources throughout the year. So then moving on to motor vehicle fuel tax, we're slightly lower than our amended projections year to date on our fuel tax. We, of course, expected to see a pretty significant decrease that aligns, since this is tax on fuel sales. We expected to see a decrease that was pretty consistent with the stay home, stay healthy orders and people not going into work. We're hoping that as business starts to open again into the summer, that we will start to see a recovery, or at least a partial recovery of this revenue as we get into the end of the year. And again, the dip and the decrease in those revenues really follows really closely to sales tax, because again, there's a 2-month delay in collections. And we assume that once businesses start to open a little bit, people are also going to be commuting and traveling, closely tied to the same activity that same sales tax type of activity that's taking place. So then there was also building permit revenue, and this, I want to point out before, because this is the first slide that you see the lines are kind of all over the place, particularly that blue line, which was our original budget, to point out that when we estimate our month-to-month budget, our budgeted amounts, we're using a 2-year average. So historically, how much of our actual revenue have we collected month by month is based on how much of prior year's revenue was collected in any given month. And as you can see with building permit activity, there's usually a spike in May, and towards the end of the year, but in general, it ebbs and flows. It's up and it's down. And we are seeing that, so our amended projections for collections really follow that same that same history path as well. We are a little bit lower. Our year-to-date collection so far is a little bit lower than our projections, but really that is related to a slow February, or smaller collections in February, because actually our March, April, and May activity exceeded our amended projections for building permit activity. Really, the number of permits we've been issued is really on par with what we've been issuing in prior years. The biggest difference is the value of those projects. We did have a couple of large projects in both March and May, which is where you see the greater variance between the expected and the actual revenues collected, and that was the Legacy Plaza project and the Pioneer Elementary School replacement projects. So then moving on to development services, also community development related, but we pulled out specifically the zoning and plan checking fees, since those we felt were most closely tied to economic development and really activity going on in the economy. And what we've actually collected year to date has exceeded our initial projections. Initially, our March activity remained really strong. It became a little stagnant in April, and we think that perhaps it was maybe that that kind of everybody is just kind of waiting to see what was happening in April. We think that it was a lot of pent-up demand and catch-up taking place perhaps in May, which is why we see that spike in May as well. And we're hoping that that we can continue with the building permits and the development service fees, that those continue to remain strong, one being an indicator of strong economic health and a positive indication for the economy and the recession, but also that will help offset maybe some of the deeper losses that we're seeing in our sales tax. So then moving on to our charges for services, the first charges for services that we had expected to see a decrease in was our public safety fees. We actually have exceeded what our original projections were, and there's a couple of explanations for that, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But just to give a little bit of background again, what we usually see in these public safety fees, the items that make up for most of these are the reimbursement of the overtime costs for officers that are working off-duty. This includes the casino, so we have actually a significant amount of activity, off-duty work that officers do at the casino, but with the casino closure, we expected a lot of that off-duty work to stop for a while. We also have our Muckleshoot Tribe Compact that we negotiate, or we ask for annually from the Muckleshoot Tribe. And we also have a reimbursement we receive from the Auburn School District for our school resource officers. So a little on that, the spike in February was actually a result of the overtime, the off-duty work. We had some staffing turnover in the finance department, and we are the ones responsible for billing that off-duty work. And that February spike was really just a buildup of a couple of months worth of overtime that we hadn't charged. And so you see us actually collecting that in February. We will continue to receive our reimbursement from the Auburn School District for our school resource officers. We've received confirmation from the school district. And we just actually received a word today from the Muckleshoot Tribe that we are not going to be receiving, we're going to be receiving about half of what our initial request for 2020 and the services that the city provides, or the ancillary costs of providing services as a result of the casino, just due to their closure and their financial situation. So since we just did get that information today, it's going to be another $175,000 impact to our budget. It's $175,000 less than what we had originally budgeted for, and we will be adding this to our budget adjustment that we bring to council in August. The next program charges and fees is culture and recreation. So this is all of our parks, senior center, golf course, activity center programs. And we're a little less than what we had originally projected. We've collected year to date $464,000. compared to the $548,000. A lot of this is attributed to the negative collections we had in April, and those collections were a lot lower than we had expected. And really, these were just all refunds. So people who had prepaid for programs and activities in the first quarter of the year, those programs obviously were not weren't provided. They weren't going on. So we've been busy. We're still busy doing a lot of refunds for customers. But you can see in May that we did collect more than we had expected. So that's kind of an indication that things are picking up, but that's also an indication that the golf course has opened. And so we're really relying on the golf course at this point to maybe help exceed our expectations as far as revenue goes. But also important to note that a lot of the expenditure cuts that we had were directly tied to the programs that these revenues bring in. So there are offsetting expenditures to these revenues as well that we've identified. Now, there were a couple of other charts. These ones are not as consistent. This is the admissions tax and the gambling tax. They're not as large of a revenue stream, and they're they're generally filed on a quarterly basis. We don't have as many businesses, obviously, that report. But we did know that they would be, that even though they're smaller revenue sources, they definitely are impacted by COVID. So that's why we amended our budget projections for them. Our admissions taxes is really tied, most all the revenue we receive here is tied to the theater. The theaters are obviously closed right now, and our year-to-date collections are less than our projections. Assuming we get back into phase 3, we expect to pick up again by the fourth quarter, assuming theaters open up again. And again, there is a lag. There's usually a 1 to 2 month lag in when they're actually in the revenue that they're remitting related to the months that activity took place. For gambling tax, this is always, as you can even tell from the graph, even though you can see that on average it's quarterly, we have there's a lot of sporadicness in the nature of how when and how much of gambling taxes we collect. We've actually collected a little bit more than what we had projected or we had expected with our adjusted revenue estimates. What it looks like is happening is that it's just the timing of excise or gambling tax being filed with the city. So we had a big, in May, I think, again, the folks that are responsible for filing gambling tax for the first quarter came back and filed in May. So there's just a little bit of a delay and a timing issue in collecting those gambling taxes. Now, there are a couple of other revenues that we also identified. The graphs aren't really going to be that informative right now, so I just wanted to talk to them a little bit more than just show you graphs that aren't going to show a whole lot. We had also we're budgeting for a decrease in business license fees, particularly because we were expecting that the COVID would impact mostly smaller businesses or small to medium-sized businesses, and they might not be able to recover as easily as bigger businesses. And so we were expecting fewer 2021 renewals. And the reason why we wouldn't see any of those impacts yet, those 2021 renewals aren't going to be filed and paid until we get towards the end of the year. So those reductions in our revenue estimates we aren't going to be able to confirm how close or far off we are until we get into really October, November, and December. That revenue source is underperforming by $45,000, but that isn't necessarily COVID related. That is just activity for 2020 business licenses that hadn't been renewed. So usually the first few months of the year, we're still getting the stragglers of businesses paying and renewing their business licenses. And we just didn't have the same revenue that we had projected originally for 2020. Then there's the streamlined sales tax mitigation. We know that we're not going to receive this the second half of the year. We did receive our first quarter distribution in March, which was a little bit higher by $13,000 than we had originally budgeted. And assuming we collect our June distribution, which will be our last one, at what we budgeted for, we estimate that we will collect $476,000 less than we had originally budgeted. I mean, it could be more or less depending on what that second quarter distribution actually ends up being from the state. Now, if you're looking at the financial report that I distributed in the agenda bill, the utility taxes look like they're significantly lower. So in total, all the different utility tax and franchise fees revenues that we have there, we're underperforming about $544,000. $414,000 is directly attributed to city utility tax. However, this is where the timing issue came into play when I had mentioned that May had not been closed yet, and we were trying to get the most updated information we could on all those other revenue sources. We had not made the transfer for May utility tax into the general fund. So we're actually in total underperforming about $75,000 in the utility tax. We believe that this will pick up. Most of it's attributed to our top 10 businesses in the city. 3 of them have been impacted from COVID closures. So as activity, as services begin to open up and activity picks back up again, we don't think those losses will continue to be that large, but we'll definitely be monitoring our utility tax revenues and making sure that that's not also a revenue source that we need to take into consideration and make a budget adjustments for later into the year. So that was a really detailed look at by each revenue source. I wanted to just show you where we're at with all of our revenue sources year to date, what we had expected them to be with our COVID impacts as compared to where we're at right now. So in total, if you just go straight to the bottom, we had expected after our adjustments to collect $31.7 million. We've actually collected $29.5 million. But really, one of the biggest contributors to that is the almost $1.8 million that is undercollected in property tax. And that is also a timing issue. Both Pierce and King counties had extended the filing deadline for property taxes, as most of you are all aware. And there's just been a delay in those April property tax collections that we would have normally gotten in April and May that we're now seeing trickle into June. But all in all, there's no reason why property tax would be less than what we had originally budgeted for. That is an amount that has been levied. That is an amount that will be collected. And so we will recover that full $1.8 million by the end of the year. And then also playing into that unfavorable balance is the utility tax line, which is at $506,000. And just to remember that there's a very large transfer that we need to make for city utilities from the utility funds into the general fund, and that we're only, again, the variance is closer to $75,000, not $506,000. So in the end, our total revenue budget, where we're at year to date, our actual collections is just about $20,000 less than where we had expected to be year to date with all of our COVID adjustments. So far we're on track, which is a good sign. And this is, I didn't frame this in the beginning, but this is on track, assuming a $6 to $6.2 million decrease. So that was our more optimistic scenario, not our more pessimistic scenario, which is why we will also continue to closely monitor the revenue as we start getting more information and more revenue recorded into our general ledger. So I was going to leave it at that. I thought that was probably the most relevant. I think that's the thing that I know is most important to finance staff and a lot of the things that all of the directors were doing. I was going to open it up to any questions that the council may have.
Well, Jamie, thank you very much for the presentation, and really want to commend you and your staff and others who've really been able to strategically put this together and give us this report. It's a good job and just really well done overall. I'll start off with a quick question related to general fund. Miscellaneous tax. So I'll use the theater for example. So when you calculated the sales tax on theaters going out into the future months, did you calculate it based on what the potential capacity of customers would be at that point in time? So for example, 25% capacity, 50% capacity, how did you calculate that?
No, we didn't. And that was a lot of I mean, those have been kind of guidelines that have been coming out post our original calculations. What I can say though is when we did those initial projections, we never expected to return at 100% as soon as we didn't expect us to go from 0 to 100. I guess is what I'm saying. We had a more gradual comeback. Different revenue sources were a little bit different. Admissions tax, I think we were closer to 0, and then having us come back at I think it was 60 and then 75%. So we were trying to be conservative in how we were thinking more that customer sentiment was going to be that people weren't going to be rushing out at full capacity. And I think that's our assumptions are probably pretty close in alignment with what the phase requirements are going to be.
Councilmember Stearns has a question.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Stearns.
There we go. Thank you, Jamie. A question about the gambling tax. Is it primarily just for the two card rooms, Iron Horse and Emerald Downs?
There's also pull tabs. So there are
tabs.
Various. Those are our primary. Those would be the primary taxpayers. But we do have actually several different businesses that remit gambling tax for pull tabs, and for card rooms, correct. But for pull tabs, we have several businesses.
And we don't get anything from horse racing, do we?
We don't. There's some activity that we do collect from Emerald Downs, but it is not horse racing related.
Oh wow, that's a bummer because they were doing all right. With, you can use internet gambling for horse racing, so they were doing. They had customers. All right.
And my understanding is that is the only thing as we open up into phases. That is how they're opening up, is with the internet gambling. They're not able to open up all of those services. So the gambling tax that we collect from Emerald Downs will probably stay very, very minimal for the next couple of months at least.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, Council? Okay, Jamie, thank you again for your presentation. We look forward to the other future presentations that you'll be making for us. So
yes,
and,
thank you. I
nice
apologize again.
No, you're fine. It was very good. Appreciate that. So, and I'm not sure what's happened, Council. I can see my Auburn logo, but I can't see me.
Yeah.
And my camera's on. So.
So I'm going to have to ask Sean, am I still in share screen mode? I can't tell.
No, we canceled that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is our municipal services discussion item. We have one item on that agenda, and Councilmember Stearns will conduct that part of the meeting.
Councilmember, you're muted.
Right, I was just moving right along. So we have a community court update, and that's set for half an hour. Who is that? Martinson. I don't have my glasses on, so that is Candace.
Thank
You will be taking us through the update. So thank you. Really appreciate you doing that for us.
Councilmember Stearns. We do have some guests on the call today. We have the presiding judge, Susan Mahoney, who is on the call, as well as Auburn's Judge Matthew York. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through a little bit of history because I was looking through the last time that we discussed community court with the council. That it's actually been since August of 2019 that we've discussed it, and we have some new council members that maybe aren't necessarily familiar with community court. So I just wanted to do a quick overview of community court. So building on the successful launches of King County Community Court in Redmond, Burien, and Shoreline, King County District Court and the City of Auburn are partnering on a new court, which is scheduled to
Director
launch
Martinson, I'm sorry. Can I get you to be a little bit closer to your surface?
Sure. And so we are scheduled to launch this court in 2021, and it will be an alternative problem-solving court that seeks to go beyond punitive actions to identify and address the underlying challenges of court participants that may contribute to further criminal activities. An important feature of community court is a resource center that would be co-located with the court that will enable court participants as well as the general public to connect with service providers. And so since we've done our partnership with King County Community
Candace,
Court, yes?
we're still unable to hear you. I don't know if council members are able to hear, but in council chambers and where it's being recorded, we're not able to hear very well.
Are you able to hear me now?
Sean is saying it's not any better yet.
We can hear her on the Zoom screening here. We can hear okay, I believe. I can hear her okay.
I can hear her too.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Okay. I'll make sure I project so everyone in council can hear me. And if you hear me shouting upstairs, that's why. So essentially, the idea behind community court is when criminal activity is rooted in substance abuse, mental health, or an unmet basic need, that addressing the underlying cause can help prevent future crime. And so King County has stood up community courts in those 3 municipalities that I discussed. And really, we began looking at this work with King County District Court in 2018. And we started internal city discussions as well as a visit to the Redmond Community Court. And our outreach coordinator, Kent Hayes, is also on the call, and he was instrumental in standing up the community court and the resource center for the city of Redmond. And so essentially, we had presented to the council in August of 2019. And then in the fall of 2019, we received approval to move forward with an implementation plan of community court in Auburn. So in January, we had the kickoff meeting to begin with all of the stakeholders of Auburn and King County District Court. In February, we did some analysis on support and staff time that it would take to support standing up a community court in Auburn. In March, we hired Kent Hay from the city of Redmond, and he, in addition to other work that he's doing for the city, has been supporting the work in the city of Auburn of standing up the community court. And then COVID hit, and so we paused a little bit on moving forward with the implementation process, but we had been in communication with King County District Court on next steps. And so this June, we've had 3 work meetings that we've put together, a communications work group, an eligibility work group, and our steering committee is getting together this Friday. So we have a lot of work to do, but we are committed to doing that, and we have been meeting with action items to move forward. One of those is a communications plan that we're working with on our communications manager for the city, of how we inform the public on the work that we're doing on this and get their engagement and support. That has been one of the factors that has been very important in the other cities that have stood up community court, because like I said earlier, the Resource Center is not just available for participants of the court, but it's also available for participants of the community that want to have a one place to connect with service providers. And that's something that we don't have right now in the city of Auburn, and we're looking forward to doing in addition to community court. So I want to turn over to presiding judge, Judge Mahoney, if you would like anything to add, as well as Judge York and also Kent.
So Candace, I'll need to move that person over. Who was it?
Susan Mahoney.
Susan Mahoney. Okay, one moment, Susan. So Judge Mahoney, you should be able to speak now. You can just unmute yourself.
Here we are. Yes, this is my first meeting I've attended like this for a city council, so I wondered how that was going to work. Thank you very much for inviting us this evening. I know that Judge York is here, and Auburn was one of those cities that we looked at early on and saw as an environment and a community that we were thought was absolutely ripe and ready for community court. And I am really glad that we are moving forward, that Auburn has taken the steps that they've taken. I think you're so lucky to have Kent Hay. And I know that you're moving forward with space for the community center. And, you know, while we will all face some challenges through these budgeting times, I'm happy to be working with Auburn because I live in Federal Way, but I've been part of the community, worked with Lexus over the years, and I know that, or Nexus, I'm sorry, Lexus, Nexus over the years, and I am well aware of your amazing spirit down there and your great volunteer corps. And so I think that even through these difficult times, that we will be able to still move forward with this project, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm happy to answer any questions. I can also, for the new council members, would invite you at any time to, if you wanted to meet or find out more information, to meet with myself or Callista Wellbaum, who is our coordinator or our manager for our community courts, who is a wealth of knowledge. And we'd make ourselves available to you at any time if you have questions or wanted to hear a little bit more about the program. Unfortunately, we're a little bit in a suspended status, or I'd invite you all out to one of our other courts, but we are working on keeping in touch with our participants and looking forward to getting back a little more robustly in the hopefully relatively near future.
Great, thank you.
You've been transferred over to the meeting, so I'm not sure if you would also like to speak. Oh, you're muted, Judge York.
There we go. I would like to say that I've been in Auburn for over 2 years now. I think I'm the longest judge district court that's been in Auburn, and the entire time I've been here, I've seen it as a community in desperate need of services and help. I can order people to go get treatment and mental health treatment or drug treatments, and I can tell them to leave my courtroom and go do that. But for many of these people, that simple task is it's just overwhelming. And with community court, I can point to the person across the room and say, talk to that person over there, set it up, figure it out. And that gives them the opportunity to actually follow the orders of the court and actually reduce recidivism, hopefully, and make their lives better and make everybody's lives better. So I was a prosecutor prior life, and I was a prosecutor in drug court. And I walked into that with eye rolls. I said, oh, really, we're applauding people for being sober for a week, and oh my goodness, we're giving them candy. And I just like, really, my cynicism kicked in. And then I came back 6 months later and saw the same people had turned their lives around. And by those simple little tasks of acknowledging someone's minor accomplishments or major accomplishments, depending on how you look at it, made the cynical me say, are we seriously thinking this is going to work? Opened my eyes to that kind of thing actually working. So I'm a great believer in it, and I'm happy to have one-on-one conversations with any council members who have any questions as well about how I think it can serve Auburn.
Kent, I know that you're also on the call, so if you'd like to share any of your perspective or experience at Redmond and
the successes that you found there.
Yeah, hello, council members. Yeah, so, you know, I've worked in community court in both Seattle before that one kind of dissolved, but I know they were working on it again. But the one in Redmond also helping to get that one started off, and it definitely helps. You know, it gives people an alternative rather than going straight through regular court and being on probation for 12 months and then telling them where to go and not really having anybody sit down and immediately give services to. And that's what community court brings, is you go to court and then right next door to the community center that allows you to get hooked up with the services right away. And then there's accountability every week. So it's not this long, I don't have court again until next month, and I'm supposed to get this treatment done, and I'm making phone calls, and I don't have a phone, and how do I get to the provider? And so it's a short jurisdiction with that allows people the ability to have some accountability, and it doesn't go on forever, so that these folks can make some changes and move forward with their lives.
Well, thank you to Judge Mahoney, Judge York, and Kent Hay for sharing that. Pretty much our plan to move forward is we will be continuing to have our committee meetings, committee work, and continue to move forward in all of the tasks that are necessary to get us ready to go live with our community court. And I'm happy, or any of the guests that we have are happy to answer any questions that the council has.
Thank you so much, Candace, and thank you, Judge Mahoney, Judge York, and Kent. You know, the gift of recovery is the gift of life, and you know, I'm so lucky to have the opportunity to work with people, men who are, you know, who found that special moment. And yeah, it often comes with the assistance of law enforcement or a judge. And it's just amazing work that the courts do. I just can't say enough about the work that you do. I also had a chance when I was with the Gambling Commission to attend wellness court up at the Tulalip tribes. And the Tulalip tribe had set up their wellness or community court for people with addiction, but then they had expanded it to people with gambling addiction. And so I got to go and see the judge in action, and it was so fantastic. And yeah, you know, the first thing he asked was, each person who came up in front of him was, how much time do you have? And you know, a woman or a guy might say, well, I've got, you know, 72 hours, or I've got a week, or I've got 30 days. And the entire courtroom, everyone would just start clapping. It was really something. So I'm so glad to hear what you're doing to help us out here in Auburn, and really looking forward to it. So yeah, any questions?
Deputy Mayor DeCoursey has a question.
Yes, please, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Stearns. Just a comment. I'm so glad to hear the judge talking about having the ability to be able to direct people to services right there in the courtroom. I mean, that is just so valuable. You know, I have a family member who has had some circumstances in her life, and you know, if it wasn't for some intervention, you know, she would not have been able to be in the position she's in today. So I really appreciate that, and definitely look forward to how those social services, mental health services, and such can really provide that extra added benefit to those people that are mostly in need. You know, I think unfortunately, as we all know, criminalization of things has gone way too far, in my opinion, and being able to provide people that outlet, and as you said, Councilmember Stearns, you know, to kind of get that new life is just really so valuable. And I appreciate the work that everybody's doing in that, and definitely look forward to what's going to happen in the future.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel,
Anyone
raise
else?
your hand.
Oh, great. Council member.
Hi. Yeah, I also would like to thank Judge Mahoney, Judge York, and Ken for all the work you're doing. I'm on the Regional Law and Justice Committee, and we're always looking for speakers they're always asking me, what is the City of Auburn's point? So now I know I have two judges that I can invite to be one of our guest speakers and share what we're doing in Auburn. And I really recommend you for what you're doing and able to do for these perpetrators and getting their help. Thank you very much for what you're doing.
Judge York has a comment?
Please, Judge.
I would add, it's not just treatment. There's little things that we take for granted. Like some people just don't have an identification, and they don't have a way to get an identification, and that's what you need in order to get into treatment. And so we have somebody there that helps them get an identification. Or some people don't know how they can apply for food stamps, and they're eligible, and we have somebody there who can get them fed. We have somebody there that can help them find jobs, or you order someone to do community service, and we have someone there that can tell them where they can do that, rather than them having to figure that out for themselves. So when I said just treatment, I wanted to make sure we expanded our thoughts to so many more things that we can help these people with in order to make their lives fulfilled. So I just wanted to add that little bit of benefit.
Oh,
And I think the
excellent point.
idea is that through time, we've seen so many people come in, and most people actually really do want to comply. They would like to find a way out of where they are. But, you know, when you're couch surfing or you're homeless, or, you know, just to even figure out where you're going to be able to keep your track of the meager belongings you still have, or, you know, like you said, you don't have a phone, or where's your next meal coming from? When we send them from court with a list of things we want them to do, and they have to go to many places to figure out how to do it, that becomes incredibly overwhelming. So we try and give them an incentive. And one of the things that I've always found about Auburn and this community is, you know, Auburn's really about a hand up instead of just a hand out. And that's really, you know, what community court is. It's like, we're going to give you this hand up to find the path for yourself. And as they can succeed in these little milestones, the transformation to people and their confidence is remarkable. And to have, you know, a judge there to reinforce the good choices, no matter, they might seem really small to the average person, they can be huge to them. And to have that recognition and to have someone be proud of them and encourage them, it's really incredible how transformative that is. And so, you know, while this pandemic is going to, you know, present some challenges on our normal way of doing business, we all know that that business still needs to get done, and people need it now more than ever. So I'm so excited to hear how positive everybody is, and I really look forward to moving this forward.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, for people who appear before the court, you know, the thing is they can't do it themselves, and I know what that's like. You need the help of other people, and that's an amazing thing that our community court is doing, is helping another human being. So I just want to commend everyone, and thanks to the council members who worked on this before, and the mayor who worked on this. This is so really impressive. Is there anyone else? Okay, well, thank you, Candace, and thank you, Kent, and Judge Mahoney, and Judge York for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so now we have an ordinance, and it's about...
Councilmember Stearns, I'm sorry, that ordinance has been removed from the agenda?
What?
That ordinance was removed from the agenda?
Oh, it's been removed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, good. See, great on it. Thank you. Back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. All right, everyone, do we have any other discussion items this evening? Okay, any new business? All right, sorry for the last minute of me being invisible on the screen. Not quite sure what happened, but we'll get that fixed for next time. So thank you, everybody, for your time, your patience tonight, and with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.